The French army of the 18th century was one of the largest in Europe, but it wasn't also entirely French. In fact, the French army had a significant minority of foreign soldiers that perhaps composed a fifth of the army or more at various different times. These came from all across Europe. They were Germans, Italians, Swiss, Irish, at various points Scots, Walloons, Corsicans, and others. And these series of portrait miniatures that we have right here expresses some of that diversity through the difference in these various officers' uniforms. The troops of metropolitan France, that is the truly French part of the army, which was always its largest, wore white uniforms, the distinctive white coats of the Bourbon Kings of France. These two portrait miniatures here show the white coats with slightly different facing colors depending on what regiment they're within. Now, because the portrait miniature is only a bust-length medium, we can't always identify exactly which regiments these belong to because it would have also mattered what the color of the cuffs on some of these uniforms were, but we can narrow them down to roughly a couple of different units based on the uniforms because the uniform regulations in effect during the late 1770s are very specific as far as what uniforms are identified by what facing colors, button colors, and the organization of their pocket flaps and other small details. The other portraits we have here are much more identifiable because of their uniforms. At top we have the distinctive dark celestial blue uniform faced in yellow of the German troops of the French forces. In particular, this is the Regiment Royal-Deux-Ponts from Zweibrücken in Germany, which was a German state allied with the French that provided forces for the French army during the 18th century. This unit has the distinction of being the only German regiment of the French army to see service as an entire unit here in North America, constituting one of the 4 infantry regiments brought by the Comte de Rochambeau as part of his expeditionary force to America in 1780, which means that they served with distinction during the siege of Yorktown. The officer in the red uniform here is quite interesting. Red was the color worn by both the Irish and the Swiss regiments of the French army at this time period, and the distinctive coloration of his uniform allows us to identify him as an officer of the Boccard regiment, one of the Swiss units that fought in the French service during the 18th century. And another interesting detail about him is that on his uniform he has a dark blue ribbon holding a medal, which is the Order of Military Merit. The Order of Military Merit had been created during the 7 Years' War for Protestant officers within the French forces. The Croix de Saint-Louis, which had been created in the late 17th century, the Cross of St. Louis, had been created by Louis XIV to acknowledge the service of military officers, not by their birth, but through their military contributions to the French state. But it was only open to Catholics. So the Order of Military Merit was opened up to Protestant officers serving in Swiss and German regiments that had, again, given of their military service to the crown. Now, of these, only one of these units was deployed to North America, but they give us, in this brief little grouping, a greater picture of the distinctive distinctions of the French Army's uniforms during the late 18th century.